All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday and welcome to Grace and Gossip. We're getting started about an hour after we usually do because I had some running around to do, didn't get home until about 15 minutes ago. But today we are talking about Married at First Sight, and I wanted to make sure I did not miss tonight. I wanted to make sure that we did it tonight because I want us to move on and get back to Real Housewives of Potomac and some other things that are going on. Um, Trust me, you will want. I have some tea, but I'm not going to spill it tonight. I'm going to wait till Wednesday for Dating Diaries with Scorpio Mo. But for tonight, like I said, this entire show is going to be dedicated to Married at First Sight. So if you have not seen the finale and you do not like spoilers, this would not be the show for you. You would need to log out or log off and then come back. Come back once you've watched it. This is going to be spoilers for both the finale and the reunion. And I know a lot of us watch things differently now because Married at First Sight is on Peacock as opposed to Lifetime. And so that means that it is streaming as opposed to coming on. What day did Married at First Sight come on? Tuesdays? I can't remember. Time goes so fast, I can't remember. But yes, so if you hadn't had a chance to binge or to watch it on Peacock and you don't want spoilers, then you definitely should log out and come back. If you're okay with the spoilers or you watched, then this is where you need to be. This is exactly where you need to be. I want to start by saying that, well, first of all, let me know if you guys are here, if you can hear me and you are watching. Please put an XO in the chat. I am back off of a weekend. Hey, Druzy. I went to Tampa this weekend. Actually, I have some news, guys. For those of you that watch the channel and kind of know I kind of share some of my personal life. I found out in May of this year that I have a biological sister. My father had a daughter when I was like 13. And so I had a chance to meet her in person. We've been talking on the phone, talking on we video chatted a couple of times. But I actually met her and her oldest daughter, my niece. I met this weekend in Tampa. I was there on work and actually ended up having the opportunity to connect with her and meet. So that was a wonderful surprise. And it actually kind of balanced out some of the trauma that I've been dealing with this year. This year has been a very trauma-filled year. But that actually kind of added to it and made it, kind of balanced these things out. I grew up knowing, I remember my father telling me that his girlfriend was pregnant at the time. I think I was around 12, maybe 13. And I remember him telling me that his girlfriend was pregnant. And I didn't have another conversation with my dad after that. That was the last conversation I ever had with him. And so I didn't know, did she have the baby? Did she not have the baby? There was really no one to ask. I didn't grow up my mother moved us, and so we weren't around my father. And then he was, definitely not able to be a responsible parent. So he left this world much too soon, but he left my brother and myself and baby sister that I just had the opportunity to meet this weekend. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And back at it. Scorpio Mo and I did a great recap of Ready to Love Detroit. We did that yesterday because I was in Tampa on Friday and on Saturday. And so if you haven't checked that out, make sure that you do check it out because it was good. I think Ready to Love Detroit is really good this season. Ready to Love is good this season. I was looking back at all the different seasons. And if you guys know, I started doing Ready to Love. I started doing Ready to Love the first season here in Atlanta. And that's actually how this channel started, is I started doing Ready to Love conversations with the cast because they were here in Atlanta. I was here. And so Atlanta kicked it off. There was a lot going on there with Mike and Shay and Shatava, and Tiffany and Ashley and Alex. It was a great season. A lot of people have maintained that the first season was the best season. I definitely think the first season was the most authentic season because no one really knew what to expect. But since that time, the show has moved to different cities, and so we're really enjoying Detroit. So if you didn't get a chance to watch the recap, check it out, and we'll be back on Friday with recap for Friday's episode. But as I mentioned earlier, tonight we are talking about Married at First Sight, and it's interesting because Married at First Sight moved from Lifetime to Peacock. And I was wondering what the changes were going to be. I talked last week about the fact that I thought the experts may change. The experts stayed the same. The only thing that changed is they made the show a lot shorter, a lot more succinct. Before, it just kind of kept going on and on and on. I felt we also don't have, at least I don't believe we have, the after party with Keisha Knight Pulliam. That's not on Peacock. It just seems like they cut the budget quite a bit. The reunion was done in one take, and the season just seemed to move a lot faster on Peacock. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments if you have been watching Married at First Sight. Let me know what you think. Did you think it moved faster? Did you like the changes? They spent less money on the honeymoon. They spent less money on the weddings. I think they just, but there were some changes. They also decided to change up the demographic as opposed to just focusing on all one age, which usually is like early 30s or early to mid 30s. This season they had they switched it up so much. They had different age groups to the point where you had a mother and a daughter. So you had a daughter that was like 29, 30, and her mother was 48. There was a 63-year-old with a 59-year-old, and then you had a 31-year-old, right? So there were different ages. And I just want to say before we get into the drama of it, I think that I left this season thinking that, number one, age does not matter when it comes to matters of the heart. Everyone wants love. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. It doesn't matter how old you are. I think that love can make you feel very young. It can make you feel like you are, just gets your the butterflies and your eyes sparkling, and I think it makes you feel young. It makes you feel like you are invincible. You feel strong. You feel powerful. You feel, those are just the beautiful things about love. I also think that, initially I thought, well, it'd be interesting because I think the older people are going to have a harder time at connecting because they have baggage and they have, disappointments and life experiences. But the reality is there really wasn't a difference. The younger people still had problems with communication. At the end of the day, because we're all different, even if you're 31 and 32, or if you're 63 and 59, just if you were raised different, or your personality is different, you can have differences of opinion, which can cause communication to be very difficult. So I don't necessarily think age is not indicative of wisdom. It is not indicative of a spirit of being able to love. You have some people that are in their 80s. I have my godfather, who I actually need to go see this weekend. He got married, in his 80s, when he was just about 80, and was just as excited and happy as someone in their 20s. His wife was absolutely in love with him, and she was 91. So I just think love is something that we all have a basic human need for. Now, are all of us ready for it? No. Are all of us able to recognize it when it comes to us? No. But I really don't think age is an indicator, of that. There are a few things I took away from this season, and I want to just kind of jump right into it because it was a very emotional season. They made history there were several things this season that were different than any other season. Definitely the first in Married at First Sight's history. The first one is it had a mother and a daughter. Both a mother and a daughter got married at first sight. The daughter's wedding was first, and then she came and brought her husband that she just met to her mother's wedding. And so this is the daughter. This is Jalen and Josh. They were the first couple to get married. They were immediately attracted to one another, and they seemed to have a great romance the entire 2/3 of the season. They were just like peas in a pod. She's just a bubbly young lady. He's, handsome and seemed very smitten with her. The only problem that they had was that he was adventurous and he liked to go to these like outdoor raves for like a rush, and he jumped out of airplanes and all this stuff, and she was not necessarily like that. I thought to myself, well, couples are always different. Nobody is alike. There are people that have different likes. So I really didn't think that was going to be a problem. I was 100% wrong. And the reason I was wrong is because I think this is just Crystal's, this is my therapeutic explanation, even though I have no degree. But I've watched enough of these reality shows and I've done a lot of commentary, interviewed a lot of people. And so I think there are patterns that you can look out for, right? So in my head, Josh, when we met him, he talked a lot about his upbringing. His upbringing was very different than Jalen's. Jalen's father was a pro baseball player, so she grew up very privileged, right? Even though her mother and father divorced, she didn't lack for anything. Josh grew up in a very different environment. He did not grow up with his parents. He grew up with his grandparents, and you could tell there was a lot of financial hardship, and maybe just he never did really find his way. He had his grandmother was there, but she just looked like they had been on some hard times, and you could tell that he really hasn't healed from his trauma. Even though you can be successful, a lot of times people just assume that if a person is successful, that means they have healed from their traumas, right? If you are able to go from humble beginnings to making financial success, then they think you are, you've gotten over it. You've overcome. And it's actually very, very different. I had an experience recently with someone that came from humble beginnings, and not only did they become very successful, but they superseded every expectation. And they are in the 0.00001% of successful people in the world, famous, all of that stuff. But this person still has a lot of healing to do. At damn near 50 years old, you can see just the pain of a troubled childhood where their validation was in question has never gone away. And I think that's what's happening with Josh. When I'm just going to go through the results for each couple as we talk about them. So Jalen and Josh started having these blow-ups about what he liked to do versus what she liked to do. Now, I do admit, I kind of felt like it was a red flag when he wanted to jump out of an airplane and he just surprised her with that. That's not something you surprise somebody with. Like if they said that she said it was a bucket item for her, but she's a lot more conservative and just not a thrill seeker. And he didn't really give her a chance. He just was like, we're going skydiving today, and then he was like, I want you to come to Burning Man with me, which is funny because I was looking at social media and everyone was like, we are tired of hearing about Burning Man. I had never heard of it before in my life. But hey, we all have those things that we do that help us to come out of our shell or to feel empowered. And I guess he had this experience where he was just dancing almost naked in the desert with a lot of other people. I'm assuming these are Caucasian people, or Caucasian adjacent people that want to be out there for 6 days, maybe even 10 days, just dancing in the desert with very little on, very little food. And just, hey, it's a time. He said it was life-changing. He wanted her to come. She wasn't excited about it because, again, Jalen grew up privileged. She's kind of a princess. She's not used to that. But I felt like, as opposed to him saying, let's find some things that we like together, he pretty much just wanted her to come to his side. He seemed to really, really like her. And I want to point a few things out. He was really complimentary to her. Josh is financially in a great place. So one of the first things that he did, because this new cheap season of Married at First Sight gave everybody bands, not diamonds, just bands. And so when they got back from the honeymoon, he went to the jeweler and he got her a big rock. And he was like, oh, I like nice things. I want you to have nice things too. I want you to have a big rock on your hand. And I know all the women watching the show were like, oh my God, I love that. I love that. We all became very excited about it, because that's what women think means love, right? You spoil me with diamonds and buy me things. And he did that. And Jalen was very, of course, she was flattered. She was excited. It felt like, this is a dream come true. He goes and buys me this big rock. He's very successful. He's handsome. But there's this deep, dark pain that's still kind of haunting him that he keeps pushing down. And so as time goes on, really like 2 weeks before decision day, they are arguing day in and day out. And it's really just about this freaking Burning Man rave that happens that she's not excited about. And she's like, well, I don't want you to not be able to do what you love because of me. And he's like, well, I just want you to come with me and try it. He never really accepted that she may have a difference. She may not be turned on by what he is. And he never tried, in my opinion, to find something else, some common ground. He was like, this has helped me and this feeds me, and I built this community here, and this is what I have to do. And she was like she was doing a lot of bending. I jumped out the airplane. She got in a boat with him and was out hugging the monkeys. Everything that he wanted her to do, he kept pushing her, putting the goalpost higher and higher and higher. And eventually, it just got too high. But they fought, got to decision day, and they decided to stay together. Now, they introduced them first. So I was like, okay, all right, we're in a good place. Marriage is about compromise, and people very rarely have the same hobbies. Like, it's very rare. There are sometimes that people do, but most of the time people have their thing, right? So they stayed together at decision day. She looked beautiful. He was excited. They left together, come back for the reunion, and they were split. Now, they did spend a year and 3 months together, which was longer than some couples have, right? So they spent a year and 3 months together, but the way that he broke off the marriage proved that his healing, he still has a lot of healing to do. And unfortunately, because he's successful and he's probably learned to avoid it by just finding another adventure, finding something else to hang on to, he does not deal with his issues. And even in the finale, the reunion, he never really acknowledged that his behavior was 100% dysfunctional. So she shares that they went on vacation. They were getting ready to go on vacation. And he just looks at her one day and says, I'm not happy. I don't want to be with you anymore. She's like, what? What are you talking about? I'm hurt. How can you say that? Can we work it out? He says, okay, we can work it out till they get home. And he says, no, I was right. I'm just very miserable with you. I don't want to be with you. Now, when they sat down with Kevin Frazier, Kevin says, how could you have done that? And Josh says that he was unhappy and he just didn't realize it. Unhappy and just doesn't realize it. She was asking me, was I happy? And I kept telling her yes. And it took me to get to a year and 3 months later to realize that I wasn't. That doesn't make any sense. What happened is Josh used the show as escape. Josh uses Burning Man as an escape. Josh uses the jumping out of airplanes as an escape. And immediately after they separated, Josh was in the club kissing all over some woman. He's trying to fill his void of pain and probably not being worthy with the thrill-seeking things. And unfortunately, it's really difficult for another person to be able to pick that out. It's very, very difficult because he was all in. He did all the things, as we like to say, he did all the things, complimentary, considerate, taking her out. But he was adamant that it was his way. Everything had to be this. She had to come over here. I think that's probably the only red flag that she had. But even still, a lot of women wouldn't have considered that a red flag, because if he's wanting you to do things with him, he's also telling you that he wants to spend the time with you. So you're thinking, maybe, he really is into me. He wants me to be a part of his world. He's buying me this. He's attractive. He seems to be very open. There was one scene, for anybody that watched it, especially if you guys watched it on the replay, there was one scene where she rolled her eyes at something that he said. He lost it. He was like, "Don't you ever roll your eyes at me. That's disrespectful." And I was like, "Oop, oop, 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 oop." There's that unhealed trauma coming up, because the way he said it was just like a kid that was angry and wanted to lash out. Literally, totally out of left field. He was unable to be rational in a conversation. It was all about him. Don't cut me off. And then he would immediately cut her off. He was definitely, I agree, Jersey, definitely living his life in perpetual escapism. And I think a lot of people do that. It looks different for different people, be it drinking, always having a drink, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, or moving from person to person to person, shopping. It's so many ways that people can hide their pain. But whenever there's extremes, whenever someone is extreme about something, to me, that's always a huge red flag, that they are hiding or not able to cope with something, and they are using all these things as a way of avoidance, right? And so it was really sad to watch, because you can see that Jalen, like many women, did everything that she could possibly do to be what she thought he wanted, and it still just wasn't enough, because he's not happy in himself. You can make all the money in the world, you can be as good looking as possible, you can be in the right zip code, you can have the right car, you can have the right job, the right social group, but if you aren't happy in yourself, you're not going to be happy. And guess who gets to deal with that? Whoever you lay down with at night. Relationships are a HD mirror. You hear me? They are like a high definition mirror. So whatever issues you have, they're going to show up when it comes to a relationship. They are going to show up. They are going to, the other person is going to be, ask you about them. And it's not because they are trying to pick on you. It's because the stuff that you're hiding from other people, the person that's closest to you is always able to see. And so I think with Josh, he could not fake it anymore. He could fake it for a while, because he's used to that. You can tell that because he's been able to be successful, he knows how to put up a front. He probably puts up a front for work, for all the women that he deals with, his clients, his business partner. But whoever is with him on a daily basis, eventually he's going to crack. I hope he gets some help, because that's really sad. And I think sometimes this reality shows, maybe it's not always exploiting, because these people sign up. And I don't think that he was like, he definitely has some issues. I think he could definitely be a person that could be emotionally, and, he was emotionally abusive. That's emotional abuse. When you just up and tell somebody, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm not happy with you, after a year and 3 months with no warning. Like, that's definitely emotional abuse, because you knew that you weren't happy, or maybe you were hiding it from yourself, right? But but to even treat her that way was not fair to her. But it's also why, even though I talk about reality TV all the time, and I love you guys for watching and tuning in, I'm just not a big fan of going on TV to find a mate, because again, Married at First Sight was another opportunity for thrill seeking. You know what? The best relationships are people that meet and understand that love and real healthy relationships can be boring AF. If you got to be on TV, if you got to be with a person that has all this stuff, and they can constantly take you places, and it can constantly, the reality is that's not real life. And eventually, even people that have, tons and tons of money, they eventually, the train slows to a stop, and it's just you and that person. And if you're not content with yourself, you're not going to be content with another person. And so that is why, in my opinion, that marriage crashed and burned. They were the most, I mean, literally, guys, for the first, like I said, 2/3 of the show, they were up in each other. They were so cute. She was laughing, he was laughing. They were off to a great start. All the couples felt like they were the most in sync, right? And they ended up being the most heartbreaking because he went a year and 3 months and then just dumped her. And then, even on the couch, had no sense of accountability with Kevin, and did not want to go into it really. I think, the reunion was lackluster to me because I feel like he should have been kind of held to the fire for that, because it's emotionally abusive, and it's crazy, right? So I do wish Kevin had been able to kind of dive in a little bit more, but because we only had an hour, we didn't hear anything else. I mean, he just kind of moved quickly through everything. Nobody really was held to the fire. But that relationship, these people were young. Jalen was 29, and he was like 31 or 32. So this was one of the younger couples on the show, and just extreme dysfunction. He's not mature at all. He's not mature emotionally. He has matured as far as being able to, this is the young relationship I thought was promising. Hey, you there? I was 100% wrong. And literally, after that conversation I had here with you guys, I went and watched the next episode. They were like going at it. But again, you don't think that because you want to go to a revival, it's not a revival, but like a what are those, rave, it's going to be the end of the marriage. But he needs some help. You know what I mean? He needs some help because he's just relying on overly extreme situations to prove his own worth and validation to himself. And eventually that's going to run out. But it did. This season was crazy. Mother and daughter. So Jalen was the daughter, and then her mother is Belinda. Now, this next couple, so that's one couple that did not make it, Jalen and Josh. We're going to move to Jalen's mom, Belinda, and Chad. Now, Belinda and Chad obviously are both, this is their this is Chad's fourth marriage. He is a veteran, and she was married early in life. You'll bet against me. Hell, I may bet against myself, because I'll tell you what, I got something from Married at First Sight. But anyway, so Chad is a veteran. Belinda was a stay-at-home mom initially. After she got a divorce, she kind of struggled to get back on her feet. I want to point out that that's one of the things that Jalen was carrying with her. And I think most daughters carry the scars of their mothers, right? Because every time something would happen, she would be like thinking about, well, when my mom and my dad got divorced, I watched my mom struggle. So I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to make sure I have my own money. And I think that's smart. But I also think that she allowed seeing Belinda hurt to really hurt her. So she kind of was living vicariously through her mother's pain, trying to avoid the things her mother had dealt with. But yes, this was Chad's fourth marriage. He'd been married 3 times before. And like I said, he was a veteran. So again, this marriage started off great. They both were attracted to each other initially. I didn't know if they were going to be attracted to each other, because I think the older people get, things change. People look different. You don't know if they're going to be attracted or not. When you're young, everybody's tight and firm and beautiful. It's a little different. The older you get, you done had some babies, you done birthed some babies, grown some babies up. He done lost some hair, gained some belly. Like, you just don't know if people are going to like that version. Like, you probably would have liked my 30-year-old version. I don't know if you're going to like my 48-year-old version. But they both were attracted to each other. I thought we were out of the woodworks. I thought things were good. But I will say this. He is a veteran. And I am married to a veteran, right? And my husband, I mean, I'm sure he would not mind me sharing this, but we first started dating. He shared with me that he struggled with PTSD. Now, I did not know what the hell that was because, I didn't grow up with around anyone that was in the military. My uncle was in the Air Force, but I didn't grow up around him. So I didn't really understand what that meant. Since being with my husband, we've been together 5 years. I have learned a lot, and I'm still learning about PTSD and just some of the after effects of being in the military. And what I would like to say, I would just like to extend some grace to Chad, because what I think was a shame this season is they did not really address his issues or explain why he was struggling so much. He had so much difficulty with the way the show was set up. So not wanting to join the military to be deployed to have something to do. It's definitely not something to do. But I think the military can be good for some people. But I will say, after learning, getting to know my husband and hearing his story and knowing, I've talked to so many other people that have been military vets. I actually met one this weekend when I was in Tampa, and this was a woman, and she was like, "You just never understand because you weren't in the military, but there's so much more, and so many people have long lasting after effects." I don't know if he was he was not in Vietnam. He was not old enough to be in Vietnam, but he probably did go to war. For those of you that watch the show, he mentioned having anxiety. He mentioned always wanting to protect. It just was some buzzwords for me. I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely PTSD. That's definitely from his time in the military and what he's not been able to deal with. And ironically, kind of like Josh, as opposed to healing, he has tried to find happiness in a relationship. I actually really like Chad a lot. I think that Chad really wants love and wants to be in a relationship. He has a sweetness to him. He was very sweet to Belinda. He actually went and bought her a big rock as well. Money is not an object, because not only is he a veteran, but he also is a real estate. I think he does commercial real estate. So it seems like he's doing well, but he is extremely, it does not have any ways of coping with his anxiety. One of the things that she mentioned was that first of all, the filming the show, and him being a person that is used to a certain schedule in a certain way, he became very irritable and irate with the production schedule. When the production schedule would change, he would go through the roof. And, I'm not taping, just let us talk. Like, he was rude to production several times. But for me, when I watched, and you guys, if you saw it and you want to comment, please do. And if you're watching on the replay, please comment on this. I think this is a really serious issue that I think Married at First Sight missed an opportunity to really talk about it. This could have been, I really wish they would have had an expert come in and talk about PTSD and people that have been in the military, because his need for structure, and when that structure is taken away, him feeling very like he was out of control and didn't know how to handle it, it affected the relationship with Belinda. And I think she probably hasn't dealt with someone that's been in the military. I hadn't either. But I can tell, like, some of these things, it is because of they are broken down and then programmed, and that doesn't leave, right? It doesn't leave. And so I have empathy and grace for Chad, because you can tell he wants love, but he doesn't know how to deal with the issues that he's struggling with. And most women are not going to want to deal with it because it's a lot, right? So the production schedule, when it would change, he would become thrown off. She also talks about the fact that he their sleep schedule and things like that. At the reunion, they did leave together on decision day, even though I could tell she wasn't really sure about it, because him acting out for those few times had kind of thrown her off. And he wanted her to come with him. He was like, "We're out of here." She's like, "I'm not out, you're out." But he's very much in that masculine, this is how I said it. I'm the leader. He actually said that he was not used to not being the leader. And that's because, he in the military for all these years, he's been the leader. He's been taught this way. And in this situation, he doesn't know what's happening. He's not in control. When you're filming these shows, you have no idea what you're going to look like. You're thrown, the vulnerability was not good for him. And it could be triggering. So she acknowledged that they had broken up because the intimacy had waned. He had a cat. She has a dog. They said the cat had anxiety. The cat is mirroring the owner. Those of you that have pets know your pets mirror your personality. They just do. They are little reflectors, right? Little mirrors of us. And so his cat had anxiety. Her dog was, kind of loving and just very spoiled. And she now this is, I think it's like a doodle, a standard poodle or a doodle. It was a big dog. She sleeps with the dog. I love the dogs, but I don't necessarily would not want to sleep with the big doodle dog. But his cats are quiet. I don't know. I know I got a girlfriend that got a cat. They don't always do a lot of snuggling. They may snuggle sometimes, they may not. It's a pet that gives you space. But she was really into the dog, and the dog was like, I gotta have the dog in the bed. How can y'all get busy if the dog is in the bed? And the dog is the full size of you. Like, it was a big dog. But she, different people and different things. But when the dog kind of went at the cat attacked him because it was trying to get away from the dog, and he lost it, right? Because again, just like with Josh, that cat is one of his ways of coping. And then she said at night he would never spend time with her. There was no intimacy. He acknowledged at the reunion that he doesn't sleep very often. That he does not sleep often. He usually is up to 1 or 1:30 in the morning. Again, symptoms of PTSD, right? He's not sleeping. He's drinking a lot, and that was a turnoff for her, as it should have been, right? A person that's an alcoholic, that has a number of problems associated with it that a new person is probably not signing up to deal with. But to me, that is also a symptom, or can be a symptom, of his PTSD and his inability to cope. He hasn't found positive or healthy ways of being able to cope with that. And I just think the show missed an opportunity to really give him some grace, because what ended up happening was he went off on, when they got together at another, after the show, all the cast gets together, he went off on everybody, because they were asking him questions. And he felt unsafe. The production was there, and he's like, it's all on camera. And he just goes off. He tells everybody, F you. But you could tell, I believe Chad really, really liked Belinda. I believe Chad is a good guy. He just needs some help. Yes, 4 marriages is a red flag. But he just needs some help. He needs some help, and it's sad because, again, I agree. Hey there. I definitely agree with your comment about, I'll put this up on the screen. There's a diligence that wasn't done by the production and site teams. He should have been vetted out. That's true. That's definitely true, because it didn't take long for us to see that as a viewing audience, to see, oh, this man is dealing with PTSD. He's a military vet. He does not like not being in control. He has issues sleeping. He's got issues with alcohol, drinking, but he's also trying very hard to show up for this woman that he really likes a lot. He's probably liked all of his wives a lot. He just hasn't taken care of himself. And the sad thing is, I think for a lot of people in the military, there may not be a quick fix, right? There may not be, a pill or a certain number of therapy sessions that can help them. They really need to find what works for them, take their time, give themselves grace. And then if you are in a relationship, you really have to find someone that understands that and is willing to learn and be a part of it, and then also still holds you accountable. I think Belinda was holding him accountable, but I think she didn't understand the issues. The fact that he's not going to bed at night, the fact that he's drinking, you're just looking at it like, oh, you're drinking too much. You're drinking, but like, why are you drinking so much? What is causing this? he probably this experience is probably going to, make him, well, he keeps looking for love, but I'm assuming that this experience is probably going to be hurtful for him because he's embarrassed. This is seen nationwide. He has one daughter. He had a sister he seemed pretty close to, but he seemed to really want love. And he was like, he went on the show because he felt like, nothing else has worked. And so maybe doing something outside of his comfort zone would work. But doing something outside of his comfort zone also put him in a place that he felt like he was out of control and he acted out. Right. And so I just, like I said, I really wish I could have interviewed him or talked to him, because I think being married to my husband and really having a chance to kind of get to know and understand. And because at first I did not understand. I remember I went out with two guys that were military vets before my husband. And the first guy, I remember we were out on a date and he's talking about like casing the perimeter to make sure that we're at Applebee's. Like, what? What are you casing the perimeter for? At first date, last date, grand opening, grand closing. This dude is crazy. He's casing the joint. He's trying to make sure the 4 points of entry. We're on a date. Like, what? I just was like, what? He just seems very serious for no reason. I didn't see him again. Another guy I went out with was very, very nice, but very possessive. And the first time I went to his house, there were guns everywhere. Freaked me out. I let him go. And coincidentally, he reached out to me years after that, way before I met my husband, but reached out and on LinkedIn, because I, definitely, I don't think I blocked him, but I may have, because I was just like, this dude is crazy. He's going to kill somebody. It's not going to be me. Because it was just guns everywhere, like booby traps with guns. So he reached out, and I give him so much credit for this. He sent me a long email on LinkedIn, and he said that he apologized for how he treated me, even though he really liked me a lot. He did not realize that he, needed help. And at that time, he was still in the military. At this point, he had gotten out, and he said he went to therapy and realized he had a lot of, healing to do, and that he just didn't realize at the time, and just thanked me for, my time and the person that I was, but just wanted to apologize. Didn't try to holler at me again or anything. Just really wanted to say, you're a good woman, and I definitely messed this up, but I wasn't trying to. I did not know. And I really appreciate that. I gave him a lot of credit for that, and actually made me feel better, because I was like, what? But then it also made me realize I needed to give people grace. But I also didn't want to date nobody else in the military. And so I stayed away from military people until I met my husband. And I remember the reason that I was open to it was because he was so forthcoming. First conversation, this is who I am, this is what I've dealt with, this is what I'm dealing with, and I'm working on it, right? He was in therapy, he was doing things, but he was very honest and upfront and self-aware. And it made me have empathy towards that. And then also understanding that even though I've not been in the military, we all have some form of trauma that we bring into a relationship. I had gone through a really painful divorce, and I had trauma from that, right? So, and we see a lot of these couples on this show bring their past baggage. It does work as trauma that keeps them from being able to really give the next person a real shot. So I just want to say, I'm sending love to Chad. I hope that he does the work on himself. I hope that he gets into a therapy program, because not sleeping, drinking, and having a cat is not the best way to live. There's nothing wrong with the cat. There's nothing wrong with, having an occasional drink every once in a while. But when you're relying on that and it's keeping you from what you truly want, which is love and a loving relationship and someone to enjoy life with, it's worth doing the work on yourself, And I also want to say to anyone that's watching that is a military vet, I would just say, I understand that it's not easy. I understand that if you haven't gone through it, you don't know. But I do believe that I know for myself, there are people that are open. You just have to be comfortable with yourself, right? Be comfortable, do the work, and then be honest. Because here in this situation, Belinda is judging this man. And I think if he had been able to be a little bit more vulnerable and explain what he was going through, why he doesn't feel comfortable, why he doesn't go to sleep until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, why he is drinking so much. She said sometimes she would get up in the middle of the night and just remove the glass from his hand because he would be sitting there drinking. And I'm not, alcoholism is a huge issue with anyone, but I'm just specifically speaking to the people that have found themselves coping, finding ways to cope because of what they went through trying to protect us, and that's when you really think about it, like these people signed up. Maybe they needed the money, maybe they needed the lifestyle, but in any case, their job was to protect us and protect our country. And we don't have to worry about some of the things that other countries have to worry about because we have these young men and women that are on the front lines dealing with things that we never have to worry about. We're asleep in our bed and they're out someplace, in a tank, shooting bombs, or getting bombed. And we don't have to worry about it because they're out there. So when they have served their time and they're older and they're not as strong physically, the fact that our culture kind of throws them away and there's not really resources for them to get help is a problem. And so I would just say, next time you see someone as a veteran or you see someone in that suit, just understand saying thank you for your service, what that really means, and what they may have to, what their consequences and repercussions may be for making that choice to protect us. Just saying. So I have great empathy for Chad, but I also understand why Belinda, did not feel comfortable, staying, and he actually kind of, burned that bridge. She said that she's dating and she's happy. She's in another relationship. Good for her. I mean, everything is not for everybody, but I just think that was a great opportunity for Married at First Sight to have a little substance. But at this point, everybody said yes on decision day, which is weird. And so far, we've got two couples that it was a wrap right after they got back. Jalen and Josh lasted 1 year and 3 months, but I think that Belinda never actually moved in with Chad. It was over from the time that the dog and the cat had their skedaddle, skerfuffle. It did not go anyplace after that. All right, the next couple we're going to talk about is Rhonda and Pat. This couple irritated me. I did not like this couple. I think I just didn't like Rhonda. They're obviously older. Rhonda is 63. Pat is 59. Pat is a space nerd that comes from an overachieving family. I think his father was like a general. Everyone in his family has been in the Air Force. He damn near works for NASA. Like he's into space stuff, right? Very important job, does very well, but a space nerd, right? Rhonda is artistic and talkative, and she's a marketing director for a performing arts situation. But one of those kind of like a gypsy lady. She's very artsy and wordy, and just she wore a red wedding dress and then she jumped in the pool right after the wedding. He's a lot more conservative, but they were attracted to each other. I do want to point out that the older couples both consummated their marriage the night of the wedding. I don't know, because the older you are, you've been there, done that. I don't know, but they both did. And they got off after the honeymoon, after the initial intimacy. It just never was right. Whenever Pat would talk, Rhonda would have a problem with it. And it's interesting to me because, and please, those of you that have watched, please chime in and let me know what you think. Rhonda accused Pat of being self-absorbed because he did like to talk about himself. He did. But she also was self-absorbed. Thank you, Miss SPDRCR. Yes, she just is self-absorbed, just as self-centered. He would talk about him, and then she would want to talk about her. And she was upset because She wanted to be the focal point all the time. She would tell him something and then want him to empathize and talk over it. And then if he would say something, when someone says, you know what, I grew up, we lived near an ice cream store. You know what, we did too. Or I know my cousin was not. No, well, I was talking about my situation. And there you are turning it around to you. Rhonda needs a lot of attention. I don't know if she doesn't get it from her kids or her family. And then she was just rude in her delivery. She always needed to talk. She always was complaining to him about something that he wasn't doing right. And then she still expected him to show up and be excited about the relationship. I knew Pat was going to say no after the second episode, right? Because she does not, I don't know if she couldn't see herself, but the constant argumentative, constantly pointing out what the other person is doing wrong, and then talking about yourself and not acknowledging anything that you've done wrong, it just doesn't go very far, especially when, you're older, you're just like, I don't have time for this. Pat said he can go back and look at telescopes at his house. He does not want to deal with hearing what's wrong with him all day, every day. She was a controlling, if he said something, she would correct him. She would basically say he was doing things wrong or the way he thought was wrong. And she never, ever, ever apologized for her own, exact issues. She was not, it was like the pot calling the kettle black the entire time. In fact, he was much more considerate because he would take all the tongue lashing. I was over it. Every time the episodes came on, Rhonda would be like, well, Kim, I want to talk about such stuff. I'd be like, girl, I'm trying to speed through these scenes because we know you don't like how he responded. And I think we see a lot of women do that. I've done that before. I can acknowledge that. And I see that's wrong. You don't tell somebody that their feelings are wrong. That's just how they feel. You can tell them that you didn't mean to make them feel like that. That wasn't your intent. But you can't tell them that they're wrong for feeling that way. What the hell? We would not allow someone to tell us that. Women can be bullies sometimes. Rhonda was bullying Pat the whole season. And then Pat says, he shows up and he says no. He shows up to decision day and he says no. And then Pat convinces him to say yes. She convinced him to say yes. And I knew, Pat knew he could not take that. He was going to jump off a bridge. He would have sent himself to space if he had to stick with Rhonda any longer than he did. She is a wild woman. She needs to be by herself and have some therapy because I think she wants, again, everybody wants love. But in order to actually be ready to love and ready to be married, you have to be willing to acknowledge that you're not perfect, and not just willing. Rhonda was willing to work with Pat on all Pat's issues. Rhonda did not acknowledge nor even consider that some issues were hers. Now, when she came back to the reunion, I would say she looked very pretty. And I love that at 63 that she's just, kept herself. She looked very good. She bleached her hair and it seemed like she might have learned a little bit from watching herself, but still overall, I would have needed her to come and acknowledge that watching herself back, she would have owed Pat an apology. Because this is the thing. You're married at first sight. He's not going to be perfect. You're not perfect. He's not going to know what to do. You're not going to know what to do. So instead of lecturing him all the time, why not work together and say, okay, I can do this better. What can you do? Now, Pat's not innocent because he's passive aggressive as hell. And so as opposed to standing up for himself, he just allowed it. But one thing I know is, when people just allow other people to run over them, eventually they snap. And they usually snap and don't want to be with you or they may snap on you. And Pat snapped and did not want to be around Rhonda. And I don't blame him. He should have stuck to his guns with the first no. Because then Rhonda made fun of him. Rhonda said that he was not man enough for her. Rhonda quoted a Toni Braxton record. She was like, he's not masculine enough. That's why I wasn't sexually attracted to him. Pat said he was not getting enough sex. Rhonda said that because he was such a pushover, she just wasn't attracted to him. And he knew that. And then she still expected him to say yes. She didn't want to have sex with him, but she expected him to stay with her. Absolutely crazy. Um, but to say that, to just emasculate him on the show was crazy. Rhonda's not self-aware. And Rhonda's going to have a hard time, because one thing I know about, the older you get, the less patience you have for BS. So she is going to get on any man's nerves. The older men are going to kick her to the curb and get a younger woman. It's not going to work, Rhonda. You may want to work on that. And Pat would have been a good guy for you, but you ran Pat off. Yes, he wasn't perfect. Yes, you might not. I mean, she was condescending about him liking space stuff. She feels like everything that she likes is good. Everything that he was into, she thought was petty, or she was just not a good partner, not a good partner at all. And I don't know if she couldn't see herself, you know, until maybe she watched it. But even at the reunion, she just didn't seem like she really got it, you know. Pat did say that he does not, he did not stand up for himself, and he learned that. If he learned that at 59, good for him. But yeah, Pat, you're gonna have to speak up, you know. And again, I think you can get a woman that is not like Rhonda, but you know, you do have to say if you're not happy. If you're not happy, then, and the person is there and you don't tell them, then that's on you. It's not on them. It's on you. So Pat and Rhonda, thank God, said no. Now keep in mind, we were 5 yeses. And at the reunion, we have now 3 no's. We have 2 more to go. We have 2 more to go. Lord Jesus, we're going to go right here. We're going to go to Will and Brittany. Will and Brittany, to me, were a no from the very beginning. From the very beginning. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't necessarily think Will was really that attracted to Brittany. I think Brittany's a pretty girl, but I don't think his reaction, the way he treated her, did not feel like the way a man treats a woman that he's really into. He seemed very reserved, very laid back, very sarcastic, dry, very dry. Very dry. She was very insecure. And I think even if he had have been into her, he would not have been able to stay with her, because Brittany is a perfect example of a young lady that's been hurt in her past. And instead of healing from that, she's just trying so hard to be a pick-me. She's just like, am I doing this right? You know, I mean, she literally, I'll give you an example. She cooked dinner for them. The first time she cooked dinner for them, she cooked dinner, she gave him his plate, and then she got in his face to watch him eat the first bite. I would have been totally freaked out. I'd have been totally freaked out. I hate when people do. I mean, he couldn't even chew. She was right there. And he was just like, and she was like, is it good? Is it good? Like, what if he didn't like it? What if he didn't like it? And then if he didn't respond exactly the way she wanted him to, then she was going to go off on a pouting situation. In the beginning, she was upset. Honeymoon, they were intimate, and then they didn't use protection, and then she got really upset about it. She threw a fit. He says, you know what? Cool, let's don't do it again. And then she says, oh, I feel rejected. Do you think he felt rejected by the fact that you just went off on him, blaming him for y'all not using protection when it was both of y'all's responsibility? Girl. But I give her grace, because Brittany, it was obvious she's extremely insecure. She did not feel like Will was attracted to her, because she said at the very end, when he another example, this is the first season, mother and daughter, first season, 5 people say yes. First season, 2 people say no initially and then change their mind on decision day. Will comes to decision day and says no. Actually, he calls her and tells her that he's going to say no. She decides to show up at decision day and convince him to stay in the marriage. And that's what she did. She cried. She put her heart out there. The experts don't be expert. They don't be getting into it. They don't add anything to the pot at all. They just sit there and listen and watch. They don't really interject that often, unless they're trying to make people do something. But she convinced him. He felt bad. He actually started crying, but this is the kicker. He wasn't crying because he liked her. He was crying because he didn't want to hurt her, and he probably, knew he did not want to be with her. But he decided to give it another chance, went back, and then immediately decided to cut it off. And that time he decided to be mean because he felt like if he wasn't mean, she was going to keep trying to convince him. He was right because he told her, no, I don't want to be with you anymore. You got to leave. He was very blunt with her. He acknowledged the reason he was blunt was because he was afraid that she wouldn't receive it if he was not. She left, but then she called him several times trying to change his mind. When he finally blocked her, and she brought a letter to his house. He said that the people in his apartments said that they had seen her at his house several times, kind of giving a bit of stalker vibes, Brittany. I'm just a little concerned at her inability to accept no on a show. She just, but see, that's because she was all along afraid. She went into it afraid that she wasn't enough. And it came out like they say, your greatest fear will come upon you. That's what it was. I don't even think she wanted to be romanced. Brittany was not, because it was a year and a half after filming that they did the reunion, which is another reason I liked this season, because it gives you time to know, okay, what's really going on. They really aren't together. They don't like each other. Never speaking again. When it's like 6 months after, there's still room for like people to be going back and forth trying to figure it out. A year and a half, we moved on. I'm healthy, so I can have a conversation without breaking down, without, all of that. So I thought that was good as well. But Brittany got on the show. I could tell from the very beginning that she was so afraid of him not liking her that she projected that. And I think that happens a lot. So you'd be so afraid of not being enough that you show the other person that's how you feel about yourself, and then you just become a burden to them. And he said that he could not even be himself because he was so afraid of her reactions to any little thing. Any little thing he did that she did not think was immense praise for her, and she would pout, she would cry, she would fuss, she would act like she just was not ready to be a wife. She was not ready to be a wife at all. Bless her little heart. She has a lot of growing to do. But that's a normal thing, but you got to heal. That's why you don't go into a relationship. You don't even put yourself out there if you're not in a place where you feel confident in yourself, because she's begging this man who's told her he doesn't want to be with her, begging him, please, I don't want, no good. And she was argumentative the entire time. Again, I know women don't like when men say that they want peace, but they really do. And just like women, we say we want to be romanced and we want to be taken out and spoiled. We really do. We really mean that shit, right? They mean that shit too. So if every time you guys have a conversation, it's an argument, at the end of that, he's not going to want to be with you. That happened with almost all the couples except Belinda. Belinda was the only woman that did not argue. Everybody else on here was arguing. Belinda and Jalen did not argue. Belinda and her daughter Jalen did not argue. Everybody else was arguing all the time and then wondering why the man doesn't want to be with them. Will does have some problems. He was very standoffish. He's just, I feel like he just wasn't really that into her. Now, they were intimate. He did tell her he loved her, but I think he felt bad for her. He felt sorry for her. He could see that she was like this little wounded bird and he didn't want to hurt her feelings, but that never works. That never works. And whenever a man starts out trying not to hurt your feelings, eventually he's going to hurt her bad, because eventually he's going to definitely choose himself. And that's exactly what Will did. He chose himself. It broke her heart. And in my opinion, even at the reunion, a year and a half later, she said she hadn't talked to him. He actually apologized to her about how mean he had to be. He said he didn't feel like he could do it any other way. He was just trying to really get the message across that he wasn't willing to stay in the marriage. But I think if he had said he wanted to be with her, she would have went home with him that night. She just really didn't have a good sense of self, and just it was just, and she said at decision day, she said, this entire time I've been afraid of this. And it came out. And that's the thing. I remember, I think I've shared this here before. This guy told me If you're not ready to get your heart broken, you're not ready to date and try to be in love. And I was like, what? I think I stopped dating for like a year and a half after I heard that, because I was like, well, I'm not ready, because I'm not ready to get my heart broken again. God damn. But realistically, you have to be, you got to know that everybody you date is not going to be your husband. Everybody you date is not going to be your wife. So there's going to be some things that don't work, and that's going to end in disappointment at the very least, heartbreak at the very most. And so if you're not able to handle your emotions for that, you probably aren't ready to date. I mean, most of us probably aren't ready to date. Because even when you feel like you're strong, sometimes you're not. But when you know you can't even, the wedding, she was acting like that. At the reception, she was just hanging on to his every word. And if he didn't say something the way she wanted to hear it, she would be pouting, or she would be angry, or she would be starting a fight. Like it was overwhelming to watch. And I, as much as I would have loved to see the little black love, I knew that wasn't going to work from the honeymoon. That just, pouting and trying to shame a man into loving you, it just does not work. It does not work. Take this from an older sister, Brittany. That never works. Yes, it was exhausting, Druzy. She was exhausting. All right, the last couple set another married at first sight record. Megan and Derek. All right, Megan and Derek were the first couple on Married at First Sight to get pregnant during their season. Now, I told you guys last week I did not like Megan. Okay, Megan was argumentative AF. Everything was an argument. Her attitude was bad. Her mother's attitude was bad. Her mother was argumentative, but her dad had given up a long time ago. Megan was just constantly, nothing was good enough. Derek was very flexible. She was not. And then she wanted him to be into her. I don't understand that. She expected him to be into her when she was fussing all the time. In fact, they fussed about having children. He wanted 3 children. She said that she was worried about going through labor. Most women who have never experienced labor are a little concerned. Even if you want kids, it's a little intimidating to think that a person is going to push its way through your vagina, right? It's a little intimidating. How is that going to work? And my bones are going to spread. What? I'm going to end up what? It's a lot. We want to have a baby, but you don't necessarily, anticipate or look forward to blowing up, getting stretch marks. Like, it's just not something that is easy to swallow or to understand, even if you really want a baby. Megan obviously is very health conscious. She's very, very thin. And she said she was not necessarily looking forward to labor. She did not want 3 kids. I think she was like 1.2. He insisted he needed 3. They argued. Then he asked her again after having a conversation with his friend. She got furious. I'm really irritated that you're asking me this right now, because I wouldn't have said if I wanted kids. I would have said, like, just her attitude was crazy. She did all that rebuttal just to show up with a pregnancy test a couple of episodes later and be pregnant. At this point, they started to fall in love. Now, at first, they're fighting all the time. They were like one of the most, besides Pat and Rhonda, they fought all the time. Well, so did Will and Brittany. Jalen and her mom were the only pleasant people. and that didn't work out in Jalen's favor. But Megan was just mean and snobby, right? Found out she's pregnant. All of a sudden, they changed. They're in love. I mean, it was such an emotional switch. All of a sudden, he's in love. They're telling each other they're going to say yes at decision day. They came to decision day. They told the experts that they were pregnant. It was a wonderful time. They both said yes, and then showed up at the reunion. Now, when they showed up, I said, obviously they're together because they had a baby. Well, unfortunately, no, they're not. 5 people said yes. 5 couples said yes. 5 couples returned to the reunion, not together. Never in the history of Married at First Sight. Lifetime is probably laughing like, haha, our producers, at least the last few Married at First Sight, there were no couples that stayed together. But for all of them to stay together and then all of them to break up and it to be hurtful breakups, like hurtful breakups, like I don't want to be with you. I don't like you. Get away from me. Like I would have rather them just said no at decision day than to go through all that. But they had a miscarriage. All right. Megan and Derek had a miscarriage. And Kevin Frazier asked Megan if she had not been pregnant at decision day, did she think that Kevin would have said yes, that he wanted to stay married? She said she didn't know. I can tell you, no. The answer is no. He would have been out of there because y'all were fighting the whole season. The only time y'all stopped fighting was when you ended up pregnant. So I do remember Brianna and Vincent. And yes, they're one of my favorite couples. Them and Woody and his wife. But Kevin Frazier, I do wish they would get a different reunion host. I think I'm done with Kevin Frazier. He doesn't really seem to fit the brand. I don't believe that he's really rooting for these couples. Why is he hosting this show? But in any case, he's been hosting for years. Kevin acknowledged that he knew Megan was not his person, which we already knew because Megan was mean. Megan did acknowledge when she watched it back that she did not like the way she represented and that she did a lot of work on herself. So out of all the women, she was the most accountable and she actually was the worst. But she also was the most accountable, and I give her a lot of credit for that because she didn't have to say that because everybody was definitely, she was obviously hurt by the miscarriage. It was difficult for her to talk about. And also just, him saying that, he knew she wasn't his person and all this stuff, it was hurtful, but she did throw a little shade because Derek has a new girlfriend and he talks about how happy he is with the new girlfriend and she's the one and blah, 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 blah. And then she said, well, that's kind of funny because he was on Raya, which is a dating app for people that are, influencers or celebrities. He was on there, I think 2 or 3 months ago. So I don't know what's up with that. He didn't really answer that. But Kevin Frazier asked him, was he off? And he said yes. But so she did throw a little shade. But she overall said she wanted the best for him. And she was definitely, she didn't have any ill will towards him. And she hopes he's happy and she wants to find happiness herself. And then he was like, I hope you find that, Megan. You could tell he was just like, he had taken her going off on him and being mean and being a bitch for the entire time. And he just was like, when a man gets away from that, they will not go back. So yeah, 5 couples said yes on decision day and they all meant no. A couple got pregnant and a mother and daughter both got married at first sight. A lot of firsts and still one of the most disappointing seasons ever. All disappointing. Even the stuff that looked good was bad. This looked good, and it was bad. All of it was bad. Now, these looked bad from the beginning, and they ended bad. So it was a disappointing season. I don't know what to say. I don't know what how the changes caused them to stay in it. And then, because that's never happened before where everybody says yes on decision day and then everybody says no and then they all split up right after. Very strange. I don't know what the producers did. I know one thing, the experts were not involved. They did a little bit more conversation than they have before. But the thing about it, their conversations are very, what I think they need to do? I think this is my suggestion for Married at First Sight. They've already filmed the next season. I don't know where it's at, but we'll talk about it. They need to counsel these people separately because when they get them together, they sit across from them on the couch and they always pick the woman's side. They never hold the woman accountable. They never find out what's really wrong with the man. They just tell him to be nicer to her. They don't really hold anybody accountable. And I think what they need to do is pull these people apart. You're putting strangers together. So what you need to do is do a better job vetting people. And then when they're in something, call them and ask them for Let's talk to them one-on-one, talk to the other side one-on-one, and then bring them together. That'll probably take up more TV time, but that's going to be the only way they actually help people through their conflict. You're not helping them through their conflict just looking at them. Pastor Cal just be looking at people. He don't even give them the word. Why is he a pastor if he's not giving the word? He is not giving any word. Now, maybe Peacock won't let him. The network probably won't let him because they probably don't want it to be religious, but Dr. Pepper doesn't even talk. She just must be grandfathered in. She does not even talk. Literally, she does not meet with anybody. She shows up on decision day and she just nods her head. It is ridiculous. They need to fix this. Fix this. Get these experts out. Get Kevin Frazier. Bring Keisha Knight Pulliam and have her do the reunion. What the hell? This is not this. You got somebody, we don't even believe that he really is about love. Men aren't into fairy tale romances. It's certainly not men that used to host Entertainment Tonight. I don't like it. Bring Keisha Knight Pulliam, let her host, and then get some new experts, because Pastor Cal's not pastoring, Dr. Pepper is not doctoring, and Dr. Pia is not even doing what she's supposed to be doing. Where's Dr. Viviana? I saw that she was someplace with Nick Cannon. Bring her back too. Bring her back, because she was actually saying something. This is not good. I'm not necessarily looking forward to next season of Married at First Sight. Married at First Sight used to be my favorite reality dating show. It is not any longer. I'm thinking that Ready to Love is probably my favorite at this point. And that's not saying much. Maybe even The Bachelor. The Golden Bachelor this season was really good. I should have reviewed that. It was really, really good. Great lesson. Slow and steady wins the race. The woman that was not pressing for marriage, just enjoyed herself, didn't take herself too seriously, was not argumentative, was the one that, and they didn't get married right away, but they're still together. Just making people jump through hoops never wins. We never win that way. We never win that way, ladies. And gentlemen, the guys that they find for these shows are very different, because I think most men don't want to put their business on TV. I don't know why Will got on this show. I don't know how in the hell Pat ended up on this show. And poor Chad, I get why he did. He's just looking for love. He just tried something. He don't know. But yeah, Pat didn't belong on the show. That probably pushed Pat back. He probably has more PTSD at this point. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to rate the reunion a 4 because it just wasn't interesting. It was disappointing that all the couples said no and they weren't together. They actually set the guys on one side and the women on the other side. So that kind of gave it away. And then he asked them in the very beginning. The first question was, are you guys still together? There was no buildup. It just wasn't, he didn't hold anybody. It just wasn't good. I didn't like it. And I don't like the outcome from the season. I almost wish they would have all said no at decision day, because I almost feel like they were cajoled and persuaded to say yes. And then that wasn't really what they wanted. So anyway, that is my long and short on Married at First Sight this season. Overall, I'm gonna give Peacock one more season, and then if they don't come with a better situation, I'm gonna check out, because I literally was waiting for this show to come back. One of the worst seasons was the last season that it was on Bravo. I wrote about that a lot for Collider. It was horrible. It was toxic. There was racial issues. There was a lot going on. But this did not feel better. I mean, there were certain things. I like the age demographic mix, but oh my goodness, that is hilarious that you're there. That was a crazy season. Married at First Sight, it used to be something I thought people took more seriously. At this point, there's no reality show that people take seriously. People are unserious. They're unserious about love. Most of us are broken and struggling. If you can be honest with yourself and you can actually show up and realize it's going to take work, you have a fighting chance. But in most of these situations, people show up with their list of demands, walking in with that first. They don't really have any type of understanding or concept of compromise or what that looks like. Or you have one person that's doing all the compromising, like with Jayla and Josh, and the other person is just receiving, receiving, receiving. It's just, and that happens in real life. I mean, these are, yes, I think people get amped up for TV, but I also think that in real life, we're dealing with the same issues. People don't want to work at anything. People want everything their way. People don't have staying power. People allow their past to dictate their future. And everybody does it to an extent, but you've got to do the work so that you can actually give yourself a fighting chance. So anyway, I'm losing. I'm not really. Married at First Sight has one more season, and I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to Bachelor Nation. I'm good. I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. Let me know what you think. I didn't pull clips like usual because it really wasn't anything to talk about. The reunion sucked. So anyway, tune in on Wednesday. Mo and I have some tea. And we're going to use that for our dating diary. It's going to be fun. And then Ready to Love on Friday. Make sure that after you eat your turkey and whatever you're eating, your fried turkey, whatever, make sure that you tune in on Friday, on Black Friday with us, to do Ready to Love. Trust me, it's going to be fun. We're going to have, some good stuff. We got a little tea. And then, I do know that we're going to be having some interviews coming up from this season, that we're excited about because, like I said, we got a chance to go and actually meet this cast. But yeah, next week here on Grace and Gossip on Monday, I'm going to be talking about Real Housewives of Potomac. If you watch Real Housewives of Potomac, you're probably just as irritated as I am and ready to get into the tea of it all. From Angel to Tia to Monique Samuel's return to Stacey. Anyway. Next Monday, we're going to talk all about Real Housewives of Potomac. We're going to catch up on all that's going on there. Wednesday, Dating Diaries. I love you guys for watching. Happy holidays. I will see you guys on Wednesday. All right.